Hey, what's good, y'all? It's Mr. Cruz here, back with another video. Today, I wanted to talk to you guys about something called goal-oriented planning. So goal-oriented planning is kind of another word for it would probably be, and I know you've probably heard this before, but it's reverse engineering. Essentially, you're thinking with the end in mind. But this is kind of an approach that I have had with my music that in my opinion, has made me more successful than what I was last year. So kind of last year when I started, I was super frustrated. I realized that man, I'm not putting out beats quick enough. My content is it's not hitting. It's not as good quality as everyone else's. My engagements, I'm not getting a whole lot of likes or comments or anything like that. And one of the things that I never thought to kind of piggyback off of was my career as a teacher. So as a teacher, one of the things that we do, mostly on a weekly basis, is we meet together, especially like the content teachers. We meet together and we sit there and we think okay, what do we want our students to learn this week? And then we think of, what they want to learn, but then especially what I do is I develop a test, and then I look at the things that I'm going to test them on. And then I go back to what it is that I'm going to teach them. And then I make sure that I'm teaching things that are relevant to what they're going to be tested on. So that way, when they come across that test, they are very well prepared, and that they know, I know at least, that I have taught the material that they are going to be tested on. All right. And that's just kind of me thinking with the end goal in mind. Like, I want them to do well on the test. How do I get them to do well? I teach them the content that's going to be on the test. So it's goal-oriented planning. So when us teachers get together and we plan, we sit there and think about, all right, so let's include this activity. Let's make sure our lessons include this. Let's make sure that our notes have this, and make sure that we hit these kind of troublesome topics. So with goal-oriented planning, one of the most important things, so if you stop watching this video right now, this is the one thing I want you to take away from this. All right. It's having a measurable goal. All right. A measurable goal. That has to be a finite way that we are going to measure, and that we're going to be able to determine, to look back on some sort of data, to say okay, well, we have improved by this much, or we fell this much short of our goal. So with that, I kind of think of it as like a corporate business. So let's say Lenovo, right? Because I got a Lenovo laptop. So let's say Lenovo, they don't sit in their boardrooms and sit there and think, I don't know, maybe boardrooms. I don't know. I'm not a corporate guy. But they don't sit in their meetings and sit there and say okay, our goal for the next quarter is that we want to have a better product, right? Because at the end of the day, better products don't matter, right? What matters is, how many units did we sell? Did we meet our quota? Because one of the things is you can't really measure quality. So as an artist and as a creative, you have to sit there and think to yourself, okay, for the next couple of months, what goal do I want to have? Do I want to get more streams? Do I want to sell more beats? Do I want to get more engagement and increase my presence on social media? And there are measurable ways that we can determine those things. One of the things that you can't do when you're talking about measurable goals is you can't say okay, I want to make better songs. All right, because that's a very subjective way to think, because what might be better to you might not be better to somebody else. And as a matter of fact, the way that you might see yourself as improving in your musical craft might reflect in some of your fans or your audience members as well, when he kind of made this one turn, I kind of didn't like it and I kind of checked out. All right. So what you want to have is a measurable goal. Now, there are a couple different ways that you can attain these measurable goals. For me personally, as a musician, one of the things that I've done is I've kind of planned to myself, okay, initially when I started, I said, okay, I want to be able to put out one beat every single week. So if at the end of the month, I did not put, let's say, technically, right, on the average, a month has 4 weeks. So if at the end of the month, if I didn't put out 4 beats, then I knew that I did not meet my goal. So when I say to myself, so let's say in January, I want to put out 4 beats in the month of January. February comes around. I'm going to look back and I'm going to be able to tell if I did that, if I completed my goal. But the important thing is that when I start planning for that on December, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my schedule, my weekly schedule, and I'm going to say, okay, I have 2 hours on this day. I have 1 hour this day. I've got about 3 hours on this day. I got 2 hours on this day. And all those days, right, I need to be able to set aside time to make my beats. On top of that, I need to set time to prepare those beats to be uploaded. So, I got to have them mixed. I need to have some thumbnails ready. I need to have videos ready to be able to put on social media. All those things go apart with just making beats, but being able to put those beats online. Because obviously, like, I'm trying to sell beats. So if I can't put a beat available online on my store to sell, then all it's doing is just collecting dust somewhere out in the interwebs. So I set those times apart so that I know when I go into the studio. So like, let's say if Friday, I've got a couple hours that I can be into the studio. I've got like maybe say 3 hours that I can do. When I go into that studio on Friday for 3 hours, I know that my objective and my goal is to make beats. All right. If I'm sitting there flipping through my phone, if I'm sitting there answering emails, if I'm watching some tutorial video on YouTube, I'm wasting my time. Because that's one thing that goal-oriented planning has definitely helped me with, is that I do not come into the studio. When I come into the studio now, I do not waste time. There's some days where I might have beat block, but I know that I have spent, all 2 hours that I wanted to in the studio doing exactly what I intended to do. I'm not wasting any time. And the thing that's great about goal-oriented planning is that when you're consistent with it and when you plan accordingly, inevitably what's going to happen is you're going to get better. Right. And even though what I said earlier, like, you can't simply say like, oh, I want to be better at this, or I want to get better at this. That is going to help you to achieve your goals when you're doing your goal-oriented planning and achieve your measurable goals. But in the end, you're not measuring how good you are at something. You're measuring how much engagement. You have to have some finite, definitive way to be able to look back and say like, okay, well, in the month of March, I sold 2 beats. In the month of April, I sold 3. So what did you do differently in April, right, in March, that you can continue to build on that habit? Another thing about that is that with goal-oriented planning and having measurable goals, that it gives you something to look back on for you to be able to push forward, right? So with teaching, what I'll do is after my students take a test, I'll look through their tests and I see like, okay, what type of questions did they miss the most? So if they missed a lot of questions on, let's say integers. So if they, if they really blew it when it came to integers, so that lets me know like, okay, I need to go back and teach integers a little bit better. We need to continue to hit this topic. But if they knocked it out the park on something like, turning fractions, decimals, percents, and converting those numbers. If they knock that out the park, then I know, okay, what did I do? How did that lesson go that they got that and they understood that so much better, so that I can kind of take those elements and apply it into integers. So that's also what you guys can do. So as a beat maker or as a producer, I could say like, okay, I'm going to put out 4 beats a month. Each one of those beats is going to be a different genre. So I might have a trap beat. I might have a West Coast beat, an R&B beat, a boom bap beat. And then when I put those out, I can look back on the numbers like, okay, well, I sold a lot more of West Coast beats last month than I did any of the others. So maybe the following month, all right, well, I'm going to test this theory out. I'm going to put out 3 West Coast beats and I'm going to put out 1 trap beat. And then I'm going to see how that works. So if I end up selling a lot more West Coast beats, and like there, you have already started to find a lane and you've already started to develop a sound that's associated with your brand. Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because I know sometimes I like to make trap beats a lot more than I do any kind of other genre. But in the end, our objective and our goal is obviously to be able to sell these beats and be able to make money from it and have some sort of revenue stream from it. So there you go. Like, that's definitely a way that I use goal-oriented planning, and that I use the skill that I learned from my job as a teacher to be able to apply it into my music and into my business to help me succeed. I'm kind of coming up closely on my 1-year anniversary of having my beat store. So I'm going to be putting out another video around that time. It's going to be actually sometime around around early November. So be on the lookout for that. Because I've definitely got a lot of gems that I learned in my 1 year of having a beat store that I can already look back on and apply to the future of, my store and my music. So hopefully that helped you guys out. Let me know in the comments below if there are any kind of like planning hacks and tricks that you guys have used in the past that kind of helped you, because these are just the gems that I've got, but I'm sure you guys have a lot more gems that you guys can share with everyone else if you're willing to. But then again, who doesn't want everybody else to win? You know what I'm saying? Mr. Cruz out.